Your phone rings on a Tuesday afternoon. A daughter is calling about her father. She has questions about your memory care wing, your staffing ratios, your monthly rate. You are mid-shift. You are short 2 caregivers. You tell her you will call her back tonight. You do not call her back tonight. You call her back Thursday. By Thursday, she has already toured 2 other facilities. One of them called her back in 11 minutes. You did not lose that family because your facility was wrong for her father. You lost her because of a stopwatch you never knew was running. And the real fix is far simpler than you think. Every RCFE and ARF owner blames empty beds on the wrong thing. They blame the economy. They blame competition. They blame a slow season. Some blame their marketing and pour money into a new website or a new brochure. But researcher James Oldroyd, publishing through Harvard Business Review, tracked more than 15,000 sales leads across dozens of companies and found something that should unsettle every admissions coordinator in this industry. Contact a lead within the first hour, and you are nearly 7 times more likely to have a meaningful conversation with them than if you wait even 2 hours. Wait a full day, and your odds have effectively collapsed. Families searching for senior care are not shopping the way they shop for a mattress or a car. They are frightened. They are making a decision about someone they love, often under pressure from a hospital discharge date, a fall that just happened last week, or a diagnosis that changed everything overnight. Every hour you make them wait, they are not sitting patiently by the phone. They are calling the next name on their list. Here is the part almost no one in this industry understands. It is not your care that is losing the sale. It is your calendar. Think about what actually happens inside a typical facility when an inquiry comes in. The front desk takes a message on a sticky note. The admissions coordinator is doing rounds or covering a call-out or sitting in a family meeting that cannot be interrupted. By the time she gets free, hours have passed. Sometimes an entire day. Nobody did anything wrong. Everybody was simply doing the job directly in front of them because in a facility that is already understaffed. Person answering inquiries is almost never only answering inquiries. She's also charting, also managing medication passes, also covering the floor. But the family on the other end of that missed call does not know any of that. All she knows is silence, and silence, to a frightened person, sounds a lot like no. This is where artificial intelligence stops being a buzzword and starts being a staffing solution you already need, not a replacement for your admissions team. A shield around their time. Picture an AI phone and text system sitting in front of every inquiry that comes into your facility. Someone calls at 9 at night, long after your office has closed, because that is when adult children finally sit down after work and start researching care for a parent. Instead of going to a voicemail box nobody checks until morning, the AI answers immediately in a calm, natural voice. It asks the questions your admissions coordinator would ask. Is this for yourself or a loved one? What kind of care is needed? What is the timeline? Is there a hospital discharge date already set? It captures every answer, texts a full summary to your coordinator's phone before she even wakes up, and if the family wants, it books a tour on the spot using your real, live calendar, not a generic booking page that has to be double-checked later. Notice what did not happen in that scenario. Nobody replaced a human. Nobody handed grief to a robot. The AI did the one thing your team physically cannot do at 9 at night, which is exist. Then it handed a warm, ready lead to your actual person for the actual conversation that requires a heartbeat, a real voice, and real empathy. Notice, too, what the family actually experienced on their end. They did not think, a machine answered me. They thought, someone answered me. Most families calling at 9 at night are not expecting a live person anyway. They are bracing for a voicemail greeting and a long wait. When something answers immediately, asks intelligent questions, and gives them a clear next step, the bar they were measuring you against was already low. You did not need to be perfect. You only needed to be present. The same system can carry a surprising amount of the early legwork that usually eats an admissions coordinator's whole morning. It can answer the questions that come up in nearly every single inquiry, the same handful of questions, over and over, in slightly different words. What is included in the monthly rate? Do you accept Medicaid or a specific long-term care policy? Is there availability for a semi-private room versus a private one? Can we come see it this weekend? None of that requires a coordinator's judgment. It requires accurate information delivered instantly, so that by the time your coordinator does get on the phone, she is not re-explaining the rate sheet. She is answering the one question that actually needs a human, which is almost always some version of, will you take good care of my mother? The system does not stop at the first call either. Most inquiries are not won or lost in a single conversation. They are won in the follow-up. A family tours on Tuesday and says they are still deciding. Without a system. That family quietly falls off everyone's radar within a week, not out of neglect, but because nobody has time to track 20 open leads on a legal pad. An AI-driven follow-up sequence checks back automatically 2 days later, then 5 days later, with a warm text, not a pushy one. It asks if they have any new questions. It offers to answer them by text right then. Families rarely say the AI felt cold. They say the facility felt organized. And organized reads as trustworthy when you are choosing somewhere to place your father. Here is the counterintuitive twist. You would think a faster response and an automated follow-up would feel more transactional to a grieving family, more like being processed instead of cared for. The opposite is true. Psychologist Robert Cialdini has spent decades studying what makes people trust an institution enough to commit to it. And one of his most consistent findings is that responsiveness itself functions as a signal of care. A family does not experience a fast reply as robotic. They experience it as relief. Someone is paying attention. Someone is organized. Someone is competent. And that feeling forms before your coordinator ever says a single word to them directly. There is a second layer to this that most facilities never even measure. Daniel Kahneman, the psychologist whose research on decision-making reshaped how economists understand choice, showed that people under stress do not evaluate options the way a spreadsheet would. They satisfice. They pick the first acceptable option that removes the anxiety of an open decision, rather than exhaustively comparing every alternative. A grieving, exhausted adult child is not scoring your facility against 5 competitors on a checklist. She's comparing how each phone call made her feel, and she is stopping at the first one that felt safe and certain. Speed does not just win the lead. Speed often ends the search entirely in your favor before your competitor even calls back. Let's make this concrete. Picture a 6-bed ARF with 2 empty rooms that had sat open for 11 weeks. The owner assumed the market was simply slow that season. It was not. 9 inquiries had come in over that stretch. Every single one eventually got a callback, but the average response time was past 19 hours, and 3 families never heard back at all because the message got lost in a shift change. Once an AI intake line was set up to answer every call and text within the first minute, ask the right screening questions, and book tours directly onto the coordinator's calendar, both beds filled within 3 weeks. Nothing about the care changed. Nothing about the price changed. Staff did not change. The only thing that changed was the stopwatch. The deeper lesson here has nothing to do with beds. It has to do with every business that runs on inbound interest and quietly loses it to internal delay. A contractor who takes 2 days to send a quote loses the job to the contractor who called back in 20 minutes. A dentist's office where the voicemail box is full by Friday afternoon loses new patients who simply try the next practice on the list. Boutique law firm where a potential client emails at midnight and hears nothing until Monday afternoon loses that client to a firm with a faster intake process, regardless of who is actually the better lawyer. A local HVAC company loses the after-hours emergency call to the competitor whose number gets answered on the second ring instead of going to a mailbox that is already full. In every one of these businesses, the product is good. The team is competent. And the business is still bleeding revenue, quietly, one unanswered message at a time, because speed was never treated as a real, measurable part of the service being sold. None of these owners would ever say out loud that they are comfortable losing customers, but almost none of them have ever actually measured their own response time in minutes, the way Oldroyd measured it in his data. What gets measured gets fixed. What stays invisible stays broken, quietly for years, and gets blamed on the economy instead. That is what AI intake actually is at its core. It is not about sounding futuristic on a sales call. It is about making sure the first 60 seconds of a stranger's interest in you are never left to chance, staffing schedules, or exhaustion. It is about making sure a good business never loses to a merely fast one. If you run an RCFE or an ARF, look at your own inquiry log this week. Count how many calls came in after hours. Count how many texts sat for more than a few hours before anyone replied. Count how many families you never heard from again after that first conversation. That number is not a staffing problem, even though it feels like one. It is a revenue leak with a fixable cause, and it has nothing to do with the quality of care happening inside your walls. And if you run any other kind of business, ask yourself the exact same question about your own inbox, your own voicemail, your own missed calls after 6 p.m. The daughter calling about her father is not so different from the homeowner calling about a leaking roof or the anxious client emailing about a contract at midnight. They are all making a decision in a moment of urgency, and they are all quietly timing you, whether you realize it or not. Your phone is going to ring again this week. Someone is going to need an answer sooner than you think you're able to give one. The question was never whether you'd call them back. It's whether you'll still need to.